What's up, Panda dudes? Peter von Panda here. Hey, I want to show you a watch. I busted this out of the box to show you, and I'm going to try to talk really fast because I kind of want to not only take a little peek at this UBoat watch, which isn't particularly the high end. It's not really the high end at all, but I also kind of want to put it out there, based on my research, this is what I think is kind of the history of UBoat and this particular watch. But if it's wrong, because as you may know, on the older UBoat watches, it's actually very hard to find information. So I'm going to kind of throw out my understanding. If it's wrong, please correct me. Put some comments down. I'd certainly love to gather more information about these watches. But I did not buy this watch new. I bought this used. I bought it a while back, but I want to kind of say this is from the early 2000s, and this watch has kind of gone through a variety of repairs. I'll quick point out what that has been. This band is not the original leather band. It actually came with a kind of a darker band, and it had UBoat, but it was pretty much in terrible shape. The crystal I've also just recently had replaced. The original watch had a mineral crystal. This is also a mineral crystal. I couldn't get the watch place to put in a sapphire crystal, so I don't know if that's even possible. But what I noticed is that even though this crystal sticks out from the case a little bit, the original crystal stuck out quite a bit, maybe even an eighth of an inch, and then had a pretty sharp bevel here, kind of matching the outside of this the case here, and so it just stuck up a little bit more. But when the crystals stick up like that and they're not sapphire, they get nicked up a lot. The crystal wasn't super damaged. You could certainly use it, but it just kind of annoyed me. There's a lot of nicks and some wear on the case, and the other thing on the screw down crown here, what I've noticed is you want to be careful about the threading because there isn't a lot of threading here. This little O-ring which seals in the crown often needs to be replaced. Try to focus it there. And you just tend to get a little corrosion, kind of if any moisture gets trapped in there. I'm sure you could take a little sandpaper and just an emery board or something and clean that up a little bit. But that happens typically on these older watches. Let me see if I can show you here. Where is it? On the cap here, there is just a little hairline crack. It's probably hard to see there. Try to focus in. Doesn't seem to go all the way through, and this bottom part probably disengages from this top part. I haven't done it, but you can probably twist it, maybe get a replacement piece, but it doesn't, like I said, it's hard to see at this kind of macro level. Doesn't seem to go all the way through the metal and doesn't seem to hurt the water resistance. I wouldn't call this watch super waterproof, although it advertises on the back, but given its age and kind of the lack of really high-end maintenance, it's I don't dive or anything with it. I don't dive at all. It kind of the typical UBoat thing here is where the crown cap is attached with a fairly heavy piece of equipment to the case. Now, what I'll say is that it's kind of this bracket which isn't super sturdy, but then this post here is what kind of allows you to not break it off. It kind of twists a little bit. There's some resistance there, and you want to be careful of threading it the cap back on, obviously not to strip the threads. The cap here, the crown cap here, is embossed, stamped with UBoat. Some nice threads on there. And this watch is pretty big. I think it's I kind of measured the case without the crown at about 46 millimeters, so 45, 46 millimeters, and pretty beefy. There's no kind of design or anything on it, but what's interesting about this watch, and I'll pull this off here because it has the kind of the big numerals that UBoat is known for, date window, and this movement, which you can see the ticking seconds hand as quartz. And now this is where I get to the point where, and I think there's two stops here, so I'm just gonna rotate the hands out of the way a little bit here so we can see that. And now you're saying, well, Pete, it's a cheap knockoff then because UBoat watches don't have quartz movements. And generally that's right, and I don't know that any UBoat watch anymore has a quartz movement, but let me tell you what I have at least seemed to find in terms of the history of UBoat, and you tell me if I'm wrong. So I want to say that UBoat by Italo Fontana His grandfather, you know, a lot of people complain about the U-boat name as some sort of glorification of Nazi hardware. I believe he was a watch designer at some point during the World War II, and so he found some of the original designs of his grandfather, used those as kind of the basis for resurrecting a watch brand. So then the name U-boat is not some sort of Nazi sympathizing name. It's kind of a tribute to the work that his father was, or grandfather, I should say, was doing. And it's kind of my understanding that in 2000-ish, the U-boat brand was kind of a lower-end fashion brand, something like we would kind of associate with a Fossil or Diesel right now. And then kind of in those early 2000s, one of the ways that U-boat was trying to get some traction, well, and I should say at that point they were using the Japanese Miyota quartz movements, I believe. Now, at some point they were kind of the fashion brand, and they wanted to expand by doing some of kind of producing the watches for various brands, being kind of that in-house brand. And in this case, Modern Amusement, which is kind of a lifestyle surf culture brand, I think announced, you know, in their effort to kind of come back, co-branded here with U-boat and offered this watch at some point. And their little crow here, obviously on the bottom, and Modern Amusement stamped right on the face makes it pretty obvious. And I want to say, I think this was around 2004, 5, or 6. I think maybe in later of that range, 2006 maybe. But you'll notice here it says Movimento Svizzero, so Swiss movement. So you're saying, well, Peter, if they were using Japanese brands, Japanese movements, how can they advertise the Swiss movement? Well, I think at that point, they wanted to try to advertise those Swiss movements, and at some point they moved to either a Ronda quartz or another quartz movement. I actually think is what they used, but I can't guarantee you that. But that's how they were able to start saying that they were using Swiss movements. And then shortly thereafter, and I want to say around that time period, 2005, 6, 7, 8, I think kind of their presence at Baselworld and having kind of bold designs started to take them to the next level of demand. And so watch and jewelry houses around the world were starting to really sell U-boat, and they were trying to make a concerted effort to move up the ladder of prestige. And so what they did is they started using automatic movements, the construction, the quality, sapphire crystals, all those types of things started coming into play. And now they really present themselves as a higher end brand with premier parts. So you know, if you go on their website, you're only going to see kind of pretty nice watches, and you'll really find almost no mention of these older watches. Now, I've talked to some guys with U-boats that seem to be quartz movements, and they've had them serviced by U-boat, and they've had them, you know, questions answered. But so I think they still they still acknowledge it. They're not trying to hide it, but they just don't advertise it. So you can tell me if I'm wrong or if this is just some sort of knockoff. If we look at the back here, you know, it's got the B4508, and what I believe is L1046M. I guess there's some controversy over whether that's LIO, but I think if you search it, it comes out as L104. U-boat watch, Modern Amusement says water resistance is 10 atmospheres there, and then the Modern Amusement logo as well on the back. So this comes off, it unscrews. It is clearly a quartz movement. Like I said, I as an amateur, I think it's a Ronda movement, but I might be wrong about that. It runs on batteries, and I just recently replaced it. So that's kind of what I know. You know, I like it, and if you were to see this watch, you know, even when I do wear it and beat it around, you know, it's funny that U-boat not being a very common brand, some people have heard of it, want them, whatever, and people will ask, is that a real U-boat? And as far as I know, it is. The other ironic thing about this is that these watches seem to be getting a decent amount of money these days, and I think it's because the U-boat brand itself has been moving up the food chain in terms of prestige, and so it's kind of making some of these original quartz U-boats a little more valuable, or, you know, keeping their value in really good condition. I think this particular watch, as far as I've been able to see, with maybe the original band and the original crystal and all that, in really nice box condition, is going for about $600. That might be way off now, but it came with a plastic modern amusement box, kind of that was like fake laminate on the outside. I do have that. I'll roll a little video over that. But, you know, it didn't come with a lot else. And I actually don't even know what they sold for originally, but I would expect in the few $100 range. So, but just keep in mind, if you're going to get one of these older watches, you know, kind of the lower, more standard hardware that is installed on them is going to mean you're going to show a little more wear. The crystal is going to be more susceptible to damage. You're just going to have to work harder to keep it in shape. But unlike spending $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 on a modern U-boat, you're also not going to have to sweat destroying this watch. So just cool, kind of a cool, bold. You know, there are a lot of watches that have these big numerals. You know, if I give you a little close up here, you can see that there is like superluminova on the ends. There are little square paintings on the end of the hour and the minute hand. All the numbers and the hour markers are all luminescent too, and inside of the spade portion of the second hand glows in the dark as well. So you know, there's not a whole lot to tell. Right hook, what does that mean, Pete? It means that the crown is on the right side. U-boat is also kind of known for their left hooks, which puts the crown on the left side, which actually makes, you know, because the watches tend to be a little oversized, it kind of makes them a little more comfortable to wear, particularly if you're a right-hander. So I'm going to throw it on here and take a look. You know, the watch this one isn't particularly huge by kind of watch standards, so it fits nice. But, you know, one of the things is when you're manipulating your hand and you have the large crown cover like that on a large watch, you can kind of keep stabbing yourself. It's kind of like Spider-Man's web shooter. Pew, pew. So by putting that on the left side, even though it doesn't make it very easy to manipulate, which you don't probably have to do very often if you set the time correctly, it just makes it a little more comfortable watch to wear. So I actually think the left hooks are a little more popular, but in this case it was the right hook. So, you know, for all of my tens of followers out there, if you have more information on U-boat, if they never made quartz movements and all they did was all there are Chinese knockoffs with quartz movements, and this is what that is, well then let me know, because I got burned pretty badly, and you know, no one's half the battle. So Peter Von Panda signing off. We'll see you next time. Out.